Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to Representative Dean. I appreciate the attempt to improve this presidential primary, and I know that you've been out door knocking because I've seen you around my neighborhood. This is really about campaigning. This whole presidential primary is about campaigns for both parties. And it's no wonder why this bill was passed, because all the elected officials would love to know where all the Republicans and Democrats are so they can focus their campaigns and to run their campaigns more efficiently. I wasn't here to vote for the bill. I wasn't even here to vote for the bill that was passed the next year to actually make the data not public. But people are really upset about the possibility of the data leaking and the parties sharing data with unions or everybody else that they work with. The bottom line for me is that this is a $12 to $15 million taxpayer-funded massive data collection for two private entities. These are private parties trying to choose who they want to put forward as their candidate. And we had caucuses that got a little unruly in 2016. And Representative Dean, Bernie Sanders was the candidate too. Remember that? It wasn't just Marco Rubio. But those caucuses were unruly. And part of the reason why the caucuses were so hard to manage in 2016 is because we were all volunteers running those caucuses. This presidential primary is going to cost between $12 and $15 million and hire 40,000 people to work at the elections. If the parties would put 10% of that cost into running caucuses, we would have actually had order. The Republican caucuses didn't even allow people to just come and vote and leave for the straw poll. We required them to sit through the whole hour and a half, 2 hours long of caucusing. People were frustrated, yes. But this is a private election for private entities. It should not be put on the backs of taxpayers. I'm concerned that you also mentioned you didn't want to have all parties get the data of people who elected. I mean, you said you were surprised in 2016 because you thought only your party would get the data on if you selected their party as the ballot. Well, there's really only two parties, so pretty obvious to figure out what the other party was. But there's a concern now that there's 4 parties. You know, and the 2 pot parties haven't spent a dime's bag worth of money improving their parties, and all of a sudden they're going to get $15 million of party data. Yeah, I could see you'd be a little concerned on your side of the aisle, and you want to shut those other 2 parties out. But the bottom line, this is about taxpayers having to fund this, and it's wrong to do that. It also creates a system where if you want to run for president, you can't go to the Secretary of State's office and pay $500 or $100 to get on the ballot. You're actually, in law, telling 2 individuals that work for private entities that are not government employees that they have the sole discretion of who appears on the ballot. In the state of Iowa, the party chairs get to charge $300,000 to each of the presidential campaigns to be on the straw poll. Well, that's fine. The straw poll is run by private entities. They can do whatever they want. But here we have a taxpayer-funded election where you're allowing the party chairs of each of the parties to sell ballot access to campaigns, to raise millions of dollars, again, at taxpayer expense. So this amendment, members, gets rid of the presidential primary. It goes back to a private election run by the private entities that are benefiting from this data. So this amendment is for the taxpayers of Minnesota. And members, I want to see how many members in here would support a roll call in actually going back to the caucuses. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask for a roll call.
Representative Munson requests a roll call.
Yep.
There are not 15 hands, Representative Munson.
And that's how many members want the taxpayers to pay for a taxpayer-funded data collection effort for 2 private entities. Thank you, Madam Chair.